My name's Mark, 35. My wife, Emily, is 33. We've been married 8 years, together for 11. And up until a year ago, I'd have told you we had a good life. Perfect? No. But whose is? Emily was the fire to my calm, the loud to my quiet. She had this way of lighting up a room, commanding attention, always the center of every conversation. She was sharp, funny, and yeah, a little bitchy, but I liked that about her. At least I used to. But lately, that fire had turned into something else. Something cold and sharp-edged. It wasn't just her usual teasing digs, or the way she'd laugh when I messed something up. It was how those little jabs started to feel like knives. "Can't you do anything right, Mark?" She'd sneer when I forgot to pick up milk. Or, "No wonder you're stuck in middle management." When I told her I didn't get a promotion, I thought it was stress. Life hadn't been easy for either of us lately. Emily quit her job a year ago, saying she wanted to find herself. That left me working overtime to make up the difference. I didn't complain. I wanted her to be happy. But things started getting weird. She began dressing up for no reason. Hair done, makeup perfect, wearing clothes that I hadn't even seen her buy. First, I thought it was cute. Maybe she was trying to reignite the spark in our marriage. But when I told her she looked nice, she'd barely acknowledge it. "It's just for me," she'd say, brushing me off. Then there was her phone. Emily used to leave it lying around the house, unlocked, her notifications lighting up the screen. Now it was glued to her hand, always on silent, always face down. If I asked about it, she'd laugh. "What, you think I'm hiding something? Don't be ridiculous." Ridiculous. That's how she made me feel. Like I was crazy for noticing how distant she'd become, or how she'd started staying out late with friends I'd never heard of. But the real kicker came one night when I got home late from work. She was on the couch, laughing at something on her phone. I walked in, tired and ready to collapse, and she barely looked up. "Hey, babe," I said, trying to sound casual. She turned her phone off so fast it was like I'd caught her watching porn. "Oh, hey," she said, her tone overly bright. "You're home late. What were you laughing at?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Nothing. Just a dumb meme," she replied. But her eyes didn't meet mine. I knew then. I didn't have proof, not yet. But I knew. You don't spend over a decade with someone without learning how to read them. And Emily was hiding something. I just didn't realize how bad it was going to get. After that night, I couldn't shake the feeling. Call it intuition, paranoia, whatever. But something in my gut told me Emily wasn't just pulling away. She was pulling away from me. The signs became impossible to ignore. One Saturday, we were supposed to spend the day together. Something we hadn't done in months. I'd even planned a picnic at the park where we used to go when we were dating. Emily looked at me like I'd suggested a root canal. "Can we do it another day? I already told Lisa I'd help her with her wedding stuff," she said, stuffing random things into her oversized purse.
"Lisa,"
her coworker turned bestie, who she hadn't even mentioned in over a year. "I thought Lisa moved to Seattle," I said, my voice laced with skepticism. Emily froze for a fraction of a second before shrugging. "She's visiting." "What's with the third degree, Mark?" "Just asking," I said, trying to keep my tone light. But I felt like I'd caught her in a lie. The thing about Emily was, she'd always been quick on her feet. Lies rolled off her tongue like they were gospel. "You're being weird," she said, giving me a playful slap on the shoulder. "Don't wait up. Love you." And with that, she was gone, leaving me standing in the kitchen, holding a picnic basket like a fool. I didn't wait up. Instead, I sat there, staring at the clock, waiting for her to come home. Midnight came and went. At 1 a.m., I called her, straight to voicemail. By the time she stumbled through the door at 2:30, reeking of cheap perfume and wine, I was wide awake. "Where the hell have you been?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Emily rolled her eyes and kicked off her heels, wobbling slightly. "Chill, Mark. I told you I was with Lisa." "Lisa didn't post anything on her Instagram tonight," I said. Emily froze, her hand halfway to her phone. Her mask slipped for a second, a flicker of panic in her eyes. Then, Just as quickly, she plastered on her usual smirk. Wow, you're stalking my friends now? That's pathetic. I'm not stalking anyone, I snapped. But you are lying. She scoffed, grabbing a glass from the cupboard. You're being ridiculous. I don't have to explain myself to you every second of the day. That's not what this is about, I said, trying to keep my cool. It's about you acting like a completely different person. You've been distant, secretive. Secretive? She interrupted, laughing bitterly. You're the one sitting here playing detective like some insecure man-child. And just like that, the conversation was over. She slammed the bedroom door, leaving me alone in the kitchen with a million unanswered questions. That was the night I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. Whatever Emily was hiding, I was going to find out. Emily's deflection didn't sit right with me. I'd always trusted her, even when she pushed boundaries or had her sharp-tongued moments. But now that trust felt like a joke. Something was happening behind my back, and I couldn't sit idle anymore. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I started digging. The first step was her phone. Normally, I wouldn't dream of invading her privacy, but desperate times call for desperate measures. One evening, while she was in the shower, I grabbed her phone off the coffee table. It was locked, of course. Damn it! I muttered under my breath. But then, I remembered something. Emily used the same passcode for everything, her phone, her tablet, even our Wi-Fi. My birthday. I tapped it in and the screen unlocked. I felt sick. My hands were shaking as I opened her messages. Most were mundane conversations with friends and family. But then I found one thread that made my blood run cold. It was a chat with someone named Ryan. Ryan. I didn't know a Ryan. The messages weren't explicit, but they didn't need to be. It was the tone that got me, the flirty emojis, the way she called him babe, the inside jokes I'd never heard of. And then I saw it, a photo she'd sent him. Not fully explicit, but suggestive enough. She was wearing lingerie I didn't recognize, pouting at the camera like she was auditioning for a Victoria's Secret ad. My stomach turned. I scrolled up, my heart pounding, and found a string of messages from earlier that day. Ryan, missed you last night. Wish you'd stayed longer. Emily, me too. I'll make it up to you soon, face blowing a kiss. I could barely breathe. My wife, the woman I'd built my life with, was sneaking around behind my back. I put the phone down and walked out to the backyard, gasping for air like I'd just been punched. My hands were clammy, my vision blurred. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to confront her right then and there. But I needed more. If I was going to confront Emily, I couldn't let her wiggle out of it with one of her quick-witted lies. I decided to keep digging. The next morning, while Emily was at one of her yoga classes, I went through her tablet. The messages with Ryan were there too, along with a shared photo album. It was full of pictures of them together, at restaurants, on a hiking trail, even in our car. My car. The audacity. And then, as if fate wanted to twist the knife even deeper, I found their plans for the upcoming weekend. Ryan, can't wait for the cabin. Just you and me this time. Emily, finally.
No distractions, caraguinho.
The cabin. She told me she was visiting her sister. I slammed the tablet shut and sat there, staring at the wall. My chest felt like it was going to explode. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was building a whole second life with this guy. But not for long. I didn't say anything right away. I needed a plan. If I rushed into confronting Emily, she'd find a way to manipulate the situation. She always did. This time I was going to have the upper hand. The weekend couldn't come fast enough. Emily left Friday afternoon, kissing me on the cheek like nothing was wrong. Love you, she said, slinging her overnight bag over her shoulder. I gritted my teeth. Love you too. The second her car disappeared down the street, I got to work. I called in sick to my boss, packed a bag, and drove to the address of the cabin I'd found in her messages. It was a few hours away, tucked in a quiet, wooded area by a lake. When I got there, it was almost dark. Emily's car was parked out front, next to an unfamiliar black SUV. My hands clenched the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I wasn't sure what I'd expected to find, but seeing it in person, The two cars sitting side by side made my blood boil. I sat in my car for a few minutes trying to steady my breathing. I couldn't just barge in there, guns blazing. I needed to keep my cool. Eventually, I crept up to the cabin, my heart pounding in my chest. I could see the glow of the fireplace through the window. Peering in, I saw them, Emily and Ryan, curled up on the couch, laughing, wine glasses in hand. She was wearing one of my old flannel shirts, the same one she always said made her feel cozy. I stood there, frozen, watching them like a ghost outside my own life. My mind raced with what to do next. Then Ryan leaned in and kissed her. Something in me snapped. I threw the front door open, the wood banging against the wall so hard it rattled. Emily jumped off the couch, her face pale as death. Ryan, on the other hand, just stared at me, completely stunned. "What the hell is this, Emily?" I shouted, my voice echoing off the cabin walls. "Mark, what are you doing here?" she stammered, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal. "Don't play dumb with me," I yelled, stepping closer. "You think I wouldn't find out? You think I'm that stupid?" Ryan stood up, holding his hands up in what I could only assume was meant to be a calming gesture. "Hey man, let's just—" I cut him off. "Shut up. This has nothing to do with you." Emily regained some of her composure, her face twisting into that familiar, defensive sneer. "Oh, so you're spying on me now? Real mature, Mark." I laughed bitterly. Spying? That's rich, coming from someone who's been lying to my face for God knows how long. "How long, Emily? How long has this been going on?" She crossed her arms, her chin jutting out defiantly. "Does it even matter? Our marriage has been dead for years, Mark. You just didn't want to admit it." I felt like she'd slapped me. "Dead? You never said a damn thing. You just ran off to screw someone else instead of dealing with it." Her eyes narrowed, her voice dripping with venom. "Because talking to you is impossible. You're a boring, predictable loser who wouldn't know passion if it hit him in the face." I took a step back, her words hitting me like a gut punch. Ryan, still standing awkwardly to the side, cleared his throat. "Maybe I should go," he muttered. "No, you're staying," I snapped. "You want to mess around with another man's wife? Fine. But you're going to face the consequences." Emily rolled her eyes. "Oh, for God's sake, Mark. Grow up. You're embarrassing yourself." Something inside me cracked at her audacity, but I forced myself to take a deep breath. This wasn't going to end in some brawl, no matter how much I wanted to knock Ryan's teeth in. Instead, I grabbed my phone, opened the shared photo album I'd found, and held it up to her face. "Embarrassing myself? How about this? Or this?" Her face went white as a sheet. "You think you're so clever," I said, my voice low and deadly. "But now everyone's going to know exactly what you are." Emily's face twisted into something ugly, part shock, part rage. "What the hell is wrong with you, Mark?" she spat, glancing at Ryan, who looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. "You're seriously going to show those? That's disgusting." "Oh, I'm disgusting?" I shot back, my voice shaking with fury. "Not the woman sneaking off to some cabin with her little side piece while her husband works overtime to pay the bills?" Ryan finally found his voice. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married." "Save it," I snarled, cutting him off. "You didn't know? You're either the dumbest guy on the planet, or you're just as much of a liar as she is." Emily stepped between us, her hands up like she was mediating a bar fight. "Okay, enough. Mark, you need to calm down before you do something stupid." "Oh, don't worry," I said, my voice cold. "I've already done my homework. And guess what? I took screenshots. Every text, every photo, every plan you made. You don't just get to walk away from this." Her jaw tightened. "So what, you're going to what, expose me? Send them to my family? My friends? That's exactly what I'm going to do if you don't come clean," I said, staring her down. Ryan looked genuinely terrified now, his hands still raised in surrender. "I didn't sign up for this," he mumbled, grabbing his jacket. "I'm out of here." "Good idea," I said, stepping aside so he could pass. But don't get too comfortable. I've got your name, your number, and your license plate. So don't think you're off the hook." He didn't respond, just bolted for the door, leaving Emily and me alone in the cabin. The silence that followed was suffocating. "So, this is who you've become?" I said finally, my voice quieter now but no less cutting. "The woman who sneaks around and lies, who throws her husband under the bus just to feel passion." Her defensive bravado started to crack. "You don't understand, Mark. I was unhappy." Don't you dare put this on me," I interrupted, my finger pointing at her like a dagger. "If you were unhappy, you could have told me. You could have fought for this marriage instead of stabbing me in the back." She folded her arms, her eyes welling with tears she was clearly trying to suppress. "I didn't know how," she whispered. "That's a cop-out," I said bitterly. "You knew exactly what you were doing every time you lied to my face, every time you sent him a text, every time you kissed him." The tears spilled over now, streaking her mascara. For a moment I almost felt pity for her, but the anger burned hotter. "So what happens now?" she asked, her voice trembling. I shook my head, letting out a hollow laugh. "What happens now? Emily, you torched this marriage the moment you decided to let him in. I'll be filing for divorce first thing Monday morning." Her breath hitched, and she collapsed onto the couch. "Mark, please."
No.
"I'm done," I said firmly. "I deserve better than this. Better than you." I turned and walked out, leaving her sitting there in the ashes of what she'd destroyed. Driving away from that cabin felt surreal, like I was leaving behind a version of my life that had shattered into 1,000 pieces. I pulled over a few miles down the road, just to catch my breath. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. The anger was still there, burning hot, but underneath it was something else. Grief. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring out into the darkness, trying to make sense of how everything had fallen apart so fast. When I finally made it home, the house felt different. Empty. I could still see little signs of her everywhere. The sweater she'd draped over the chair, the coffee mug she'd left on the counter. I hated it. I hated how much space she took up in my life, even now. But I wasn't about to let her walk all over me anymore. The next morning, I started putting my plan into action. First, I contacted a lawyer. I didn't know much about divorce proceedings, but I was determined to protect myself. The lawyer was blunt but kind, walking me through the steps we'd need to take. "Do you have evidence of the affair?" she asked. "Oh, I've got plenty," I replied, thinking of the screenshots and photos I'd saved. "Good. That will help your case. It may also influence any discussions about spousal support." Spousal support. The thought of Emily trying to squeeze money out of me after what she'd done made my blood boil all over again. Next, I sent an email to Emily's parents. They'd always been supportive of our marriage, but they deserved to know the truth. I kept it simple, laying out the facts without too much emotion. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I just wanted them to hear it from me before Emily spun her own version of events. By Sunday evening, I felt like I'd regained a sliver of control. But then Emily came home. She walked in around 9 p.m., looking like a wreck. Her makeup was smudged, her hair a mess, and she had the nerve to look surprised when she saw the locks had been changed. She rang the doorbell and I let her in. Not because I wanted to, but because I wanted her to see just how serious I was. "What the hell is this, Mark?" she demanded, gesturing to the new locks. "You don't live here anymore," I said coldly. Her eyes widened. "You can't just kick me out." "I can, and I did," I replied. "Your things are in the guest room. Take what you need tonight. The rest can go into storage until the divorce is finalized." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. "Divorce? Mark, come on. We can work this out." "Work this out?" I laughed bitterly. "You're unbelievable, Emily. You didn't just cheat on me, you humiliated me, lied to me, built a whole second life with that guy. There's no coming back from this." Her composure broke, and she started crying, real tears this time. "I was stupid, okay? I was stupid and I messed up. But we've been through so much together. Don't throw it all away over one mistake. One mistake, I said, my voice rising. You call months of lies and betrayal a mistake?
No, Emily.
You threw it all away. She cried harder, but I didn't cave. Not this time. You have until tomorrow afternoon to figure out where you're staying, I said, my voice firm. And don't even think about trying to weasel your way back in. I'm done. She looked at me like she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her. Maybe she didn't, but this version of me wasn't going to take her crap anymore. Emily left that night, taking only a small suitcase and shooting me one last tearful glance before walking out the door. I didn't care where she went. It wasn't my problem anymore. The next few days were a whirlwind. Word spread fast among our friends and family. I didn't have to say much. The truth came out on its own. Emily must have tried to control the narrative, but people weren't buying it. One of her close friends, Sarah, called me out of the blue. "Mark," she said, her voice hesitant. "I'm so sorry for what happened. I had no idea she was capable of this." "Yeah, well, neither did I replied bitterly. "I need to tell you something," Sarah said, lowering her voice. "Ryan isn't the only one." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "I don't know everything," she admitted, "but there's been rumors. Emily's flirted with guys before, even when you two were solid. I just thought she was being playful. But after hearing about Ryan, I can't help but wonder. I felt like I'd been sucker punched. As much as I wanted to dismiss Sarah's words as gossip, something in my gut told me she was right. It explained so much. The random arguments, the late nights, the constant need for attention. Emily's betrayal went deeper than I'd realized. Fueled by anger and curiosity, I did more digging. I went through old receipts, checked phone records, even scrolled through her social media accounts. It didn't take long to find inconsistencies. Weekends she claimed to be at her mom's, but her location tags told a different story. Dinners she said were with friends, but there were no photos, no proof. One name kept popping up, Matt. Matt was someone I vaguely remembered from Emily's office. She used to talk about him a lot. How funny he was, how he just got her. At the time, I didn't think much of it. But now I couldn't ignore the pattern. The final piece fell into place when I stumbled upon an old email on her tablet. It was from Matt, dated 2 years ago, thanking her for a memorable weekend, and signing off with a winking emoji. 2 years. This had been going on for 2 years. I felt like a complete idiot. How had I missed all of this? That night, I sat down with everything I'd found, screenshots, emails, phone records, and tried to process the scope of her betrayal. It wasn't just about Ryan anymore. Emily had been lying to me for years, weaving a web of deceit so tangled I wasn't sure where it began or ended. For the first time since this nightmare started, I didn't feel sad. I didn't even feel angry. I felt relieved. Relieved that I'd finally uncovered the truth. Relieved that I didn't have to keep living in the dark. And most of all, relieved that I was getting out of this marriage before it could destroy me completely. By the time Emily's lawyer contacted mine, I was armed with enough evidence to leave no room for negotiation. Between the proof of her affair with Ryan and the breadcrumbs that led to Matt, I had a solid case. It wasn't just about ending the marriage. It was about ensuring she didn't get a dime more than she deserved. Emily tried to play the victim, of course. She sent me a long, rambling email the day after she got served. It was classic Emily, half apology, half blame shifting. "Mark, I know I've hurt you. I've made mistakes, but you're not innocent in this either. You were so distant. You didn't make me feel special anymore. I tried to talk to you about it, but you never listened. Ryan was a mistake. So was Matt. But they were just symptoms of a bigger problem, our problem. I don't want this to end like this. Please, can we at least try counseling?" I stared at the email for a long time, letting her words sink in. It wasn't just the audacity of her trying to blame me for her infidelity. It was the sheer lack of accountability. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry she'd been caught. I didn't reply. The divorce process was brutal. Emily dragged her feet at every turn, trying to argue that her infidelity shouldn't affect the settlement. But my lawyer was relentless, and with the evidence we had, Emily didn't stand a chance. I also made sure to have a conversation with Matt. It wasn't hard to track him down. He was still listed as an employee at her old company. When I called, he sounded genuinely shocked. "Mark," he said, his voice uneasy. Why are you calling me?" "You know why," I replied coldly. There was a long pause. Then, in a low voice, he said, "Look, I had no idea she was married. She told me you two were separated. That stopped me in my tracks." "Separated?" "Yeah. She said you were living apart but hadn't made it official yet." "I swear, man, if I'd known the truth." "Save it," I interrupted, my anger flaring. "You're not innocent in this, but you're not my priority. Just stay out of my life from now on." "Understood," he said quietly and hung up. By the time the divorce was finalized, I felt like I'd aged a decade. Emily got some of what she wanted, a small payout and a few pieces of furniture, but the bulk of the assets stayed with me. More importantly, I kept my dignity. I didn't just survive her betrayal, I came out stronger. When the divorce was finalized, it felt like closing a chapter on a book I should have put down years ago. The house, which once felt suffocating with all the memories of Emily, now felt like my space again. I sold the bed we'd shared, repainted the walls, and even got rid of the ugly floral curtains she'd insisted on. It wasn't just about changing the house, it was about reclaiming my life. I started reconnecting with old friends, people I'd unintentionally drifted from during my marriage. It was humbling, reaching out after so long, but they welcomed me back like no time had passed. It felt good to talk to people who knew the real me, not the version I'd become under Emily's constant criticism. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into projects, taking on extra responsibilities and earning a promotion within a few months. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a purpose beyond just keeping my head above water. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Nights were the hardest. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything that had happened. The betrayal, the lies, the confrontations. It all haunted me. There were moments I questioned everything. Was I really so blind? Could I have done something differently to save the marriage? Therapy helped. I wasn't keen on the idea at first, but a friend recommended it, and after a couple of sessions I started to see the value. My therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Karen, helped me unpack the layers of guilt and anger I'd been carrying. "You're not responsible for her choices, Mark," she said during one session. "You can only own your part of the relationship, and from what you've told me, you tried. She's the one who chose to betray your trust." It was a hard pill to swallow, but it was also liberating. Then, out of nowhere, Emily tried to reach out again. It started with an email. "Mark, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need to say this.
I'm sorry.
Truly. I've been doing a lot of thinking since the divorce, and I realize now how badly I screwed up. I was selfish, immature, and I didn't appreciate what we had. You didn't deserve what I did to you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope one day you'll see that I did love you in my own way. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I stared at the email for a long time before deleting it. She didn't deserve my time or my forgiveness. A few months later, I started dating again. Slowly, cautiously. It wasn't easy putting myself out there after everything that had happened, but I wasn't ready to let Emily's betrayal define the rest of my life. One of the first women I went out with, Claire, was kind and funny, but I knew early on we weren't a match. Still, she gave me hope that not every relationship had to be so toxic. By the time I met Megan, I was in a better place. Megan was everything Emily wasn't. Grounded, compassionate, honest. She didn't play games or try to manipulate me. She just cared. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. Megan and I took things slow. After everything I'd been through, I needed to be sure I wasn't rushing into something just to fill the void Emily had left. But Megan made it easy. She was patient, understanding, and most importantly, she never made me feel like I had to earn her affection. One evening, a year after my divorce was finalized, we were sitting on my back porch, watching the sun set over the neighborhood. She had her feet tucked under her, a glass of wine in her hand, and that easy, unguarded smile I'd grown to love. "I feel like you've been quieter than usual today," she said, turning to look at me. I chuckled softly, taking a sip of my own drink. Just thinking. About what? About how different things are now. In a good way, I added quickly, not wanting her to misinterpret my words. She nodded, her expression thoughtful. It's amazing what can happen when you finally let go of what's hurting you. That hit harder than I expected. I thought back to all the sleepless nights, the anger, the guilt. For so long, I'd been stuck in a cycle of blaming myself for Emily's betrayal, wondering if I could have done something to prevent it. But Megan was right. Letting go had been the best thing I'd ever done. I don't think I ever thanked you, I said after a long pause. She tilted her head, puzzled. For what? For being you. For reminding me that not every relationship has to feel like a battlefield. Her smile widened, and she reached over to squeeze my hand. You don't have to thank me for that. You just needed to remember you deserved better. The thing about betrayal is that it changes you. It leaves scars that don't fade easily. But those scars don't have to define you. Emily's betrayal was the worst thing that ever happened to me, but in a strange way it also gave me a second chance, at happiness, at love, and at figuring out who I really am. To anyone reading this, wondering if you'll ever recover from heartbreak, let me tell you, you will. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. But one day you'll wake up and realize that the pain doesn't own you anymore. And when that day comes, you'll see that the end of one chapter is just the beginning of another. Thanks for sticking with me through this roller coaster. If you've been through something similar, I'd love to hear how you made it through. Maybe we can all help each other find a little more light in the darkness. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more interesting stories.